This is WWE superstar Drew McIntyre, and you're listening to the WWE Podcast.
The champ is
the one that everybody wants, me.
It's going to WrestleMania. Claymore!
Austin 316 says I just whipped your ass. This is my iron. You're going to acknowledge me.
Welcome, everybody, to the current state of WWE. It is time now, after a couple of weeks, to get back in the saddle here with Anthony DeMarco to get on the post-holiday edition of the current state of WWE as we look towards 2024. We are already in it, first day of it. Hope everyone is recovering nicely, and we're going to give you guys some of our thoughts here. You've heard mine. We're going to hear Anthony's as we move on in the show here. But Anthony, welcome to the show, and Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well, and happy holidays, Merry Christmas. I know we haven't spoken in 2 weeks or so, but we were just kind of talking about how, as awesome as the holidays are, once you kind of get to January 2nd, which I imagine is the day that most people will be listening to this show, it's an abrupt shifting of gears back into the real world. And for guys like you and me, you in northeastern United States, I guess that's how you describe it, and me just living in Canada, January all the way until April is kind of a slog with the weather.
Yeah, you're north of Northeast. We're just Northeast. We're just regular old Northeast. Yeah, so that's it. I mean, it's time to now really strap in. This is the dog days of winter now. As we were talking earlier, we haven't got much snow here, but I think looking at the weather in the next couple of weeks, it probably will change and even things out, and we'll be dealing with ice and scraping our cars. And everyone south of Pennsylvania and Virginia have no idea about any of this. They don't care. But for us, here we go. And it's also time for WrestleMania season. This is also the time that I look towards. I look forward very much every single year to the very first Raw of the new year, because you're through all the reviews of 23. WWE did their 2 shows for SmackDown and Raw doing the reviews. And it's time to really kick it into gear for Rumble, which is by proxy WrestleMania season. So I'm looking forward to this year. This should be a wild year for WWE. As crazy as 2023 was, I think 2024 could match it or supersede it. With potential matchups, potential massive title changes, big matchups, rumored matchups, debuts from AEW. I mean, there's so much to discuss. And really, this is not going to be so much about my predictions, as you guys have heard them already, but rather just kind of seeing where you land. And let's start with the big one. Let's just start with the big one and get it out of the way. And that is title changes, and specifically Roman Reigns. I have predicted that he will drop the belt, but it won't be until after he beats Hogan's record in September. And I gave a litany of people who I thought he could drop it to. It could be Seth, it could be Cody, it could be CM Punk. It could be Randy Orton still, but those are kind of where I land. And I want to get your opinion on the 2024 prediction for Roman Reigns' title reign.
Well, I do think he'll drop it, but I'm still, I guess, being optimistic, depending on which way you look at it, that he'll drop it between now and WrestleMania, just because I understand the whole Hogan thing. But I was kind of thinking about this before, before I go into it, do you happen to know who is number 2 on the list and how many days that is? I know Bruno Sammartino is number 1 with 2,500 or something, but who's number 2 and what's the day count? Do you happen to know that?
I think it's Bob Backlund. Hold on, I can Google this really easily. So Hulk Hogan, let's see, number 9, number 854. Here we go. So Bruno Sammartino was number 4 at 1,237 days. Hulk Hogan is number 3 at 1,474. Number 2 is, it's Bob Backlund at 2,135 days. And obviously Bruno Sammartino again at 2,803 at number 1.
2,000, how many for Backlund?
Bob Backlund at number 2, 2,135 days.
Okay, so that would be another, 2 years at this point?
Yeah.
Okay, so if you get to Hogan of 1,474, which would take him till September, I believe.
Yep.
My thing with that is how many more times are they going to be okay, well, we're just going to get to that. Okay, we're just going to get to this because when are we going to have another chance? And like, once we get to Hogan's record, are we going to start talking about Bob Backlund's record? Because at that point, I guess you'll still be like a little under 2 years away. I would have to really look at the math there. But like, at what point does it kind of stop, right? Because we all kind of said like, okay, well, he's going to get to 1,000 days and then all bets are off. But now it's kind of like, well, no, now he's for sure going to get to Hogan's record and then all bets will be off. But I'm just like, but at what point are we going to stop? And then this time next year, he will have reached 4 years as champion. And like, could you not see them saying like, oh yeah, but what if we could say like, a decade running as champion? Like, you could see it, the marketing in that. So for me, I think eventually you just have to stop worrying about those milestones and those, I guess, achievements and all the legacy and branding that you could really market the you-know-what out of. So I'm going to say he's going to drop it before WrestleMania, just because if you keep going with the ideology, and look, I could be totally wrong. I'm just maybe giving Triple H the benefit of the doubt. I just think that at a certain point you have to stop chasing those milestones, because you can make up any kind of milestones in almost an arbitrary fashion to prolong this thing.
Well, we're going to find out really quickly now how much they value those milestones, because if we get past Mania, I think it's pretty safe to say that
100%.
Like we get past April 6th, 4th, whatever WrestleMania is this year. We get past that date. We get past WrestleMania 40 in Philly. He's beating Hulk Hogan's record. Like, I mean, let's be honest, because look at what he did last year. He didn't defend the belt till SummerSlam, and then it was like another few months. Like, we kind of know the schedule now. So it's really, WrestleMania is the last chance for Roman to drop it. But like you said, you're right. It's like, okay, we've come this far. Well, now we're not so far from this. Like, where does it end? It's got to. I mean, they have to pull the plug at some point. They have to be understanding, and there's really no argument against this. Is like, what are you sacrificing for all of this time? And you know, we've dug into this so much. I don't want to again, but they have to just at some point say, okay, guys, cool, we did it. You know, we made it. I don't know how much more marketing we could get out of being number 2 and then being number 1. Because if you're going to go to number 2, why not just go to number 1? Like, I mean, because at that point you're 700 days away. That's a year and, you know, just under 2 years. So like, yeah, it's you pass Hogan and then it's another big gap. Like from Hogan to number 2 is another 2 years. That's a significant amount of time, and I don't think they'll do that. I don't think they will, as much as they love their milestones, and they have foregone a lot and really put a lot on the line and sacrificed a lot just for these stupid milestones that they feel are going to be the biggest things that, you know, that they can produce, and more important than anybody who could have come along to have a great match or have the belt help make them into a bigger star or whatever. So I really believe I'm going to stick with my prediction. I hope you're right, but I think we both agree that if he passes Mania as champion, he's beating Hogan's record and going all the way to September.
Well, for sure, because I think you mentioned it on one of your shows last week, where if we just use kind of like the, I guess maybe not platform's the right word, but like the playbook to how he defended the championship in 2023, well, he's only going to defend it at SummerSlam after WrestleMania. He's not going to defend it at any pay-per-view between Mania and SummerSlam like he did this year, because there really are no significant pay-per-views. You really hit a lull from post-Mania all the way to SummerSlam in WWE. So if he just is going to get to SummerSlam, well, then at that point, you just have to kick the can a month and a half down the road and you've gotten there. But I don't know. Like, I could just see them getting to next year and beating Hogan's record and just like, oh yeah, but like, you know, it'd be really cool if we could say that he's been champion for 5 years and then you take him into August of 2025. But then at that point, you're what? A year and a bit away from Bob Backlund's record. Yeah. And it's just like, well, I mean, when's the next time that we could get to 2 years away? And like, you could very easily, if you're WWE and Triple H and creative, trick yourself into thinking that getting him to Bob Backlund's record is doable and attainable. And if you just keep artificially inflating the numbers and he's only defending the title, 5 times every year, I don't know. Like, it's going to, well, we've already gone to a point of diminishing returns with him. But I just think at a certain point you have to stop chasing milestones. You got 1,000 days. You got him into the top 3 or the top 4 of all time. It's a hell of a feat. So I'm just for now, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt that he will drop it by WrestleMania. But if he walks out of WrestleMania as the champion still, then I agree with you 100% that he will be beating Hulk Hogan's record.
Well, on that, I want to ask your prediction for Roman Reigns' opponent at WrestleMania 40. As I had predicted, it could be a number of people. And now the Rock rumor has suddenly reemerged, if you've noticed, over the last 24 hours, because the Rock was 2 hours away from San Diego tonight, and that he's in the area, and that he could be the one Triple H is referring to as a former WWE champion who's going to be on Raw this on tonight's Raw, which again, guys, we haven't watched. So I really, I still think it could be Rock Roman. Obviously, if the Rock appears anytime between now and Mania, it's to set up Rock Roman. What do you think is going to be? Who do you think is going to be Roman Reigns' opponent for WrestleMania 40?
Well, I'm still sticking with Cody Rhodes just because I'm not buying into the Rock stuff yet. And it's kind of at the point where it's just like, I'm going to assume that's not happening until it does. Just because even when he did return, he didn't have one single interaction with Roman Reigns or any member of the Bloodline. Like, even if it had just been like a look with Solo or like a quick chat with Paul Heyman, at least some seed planting. But as far as WWE programming has gone, there has been no planting of seeds. Like, I know they've planted seeds with like outside and just like pure speculation. The Rock has done it himself in his shows and whatever, but they've done nothing to hint at it on their actual programming, at least in the last 2 years. I think the last time they did it was the whole egg thing at Survivor Series in 2021, I believe it was, or 2020, whenever the hell that was. So I just really believe here that it is still Cody Rhodes, but on the off chance that The Rock is coming back, well, then if he's coming back for a match, it has to be against Roman Reigns. So, I mean, I guess we're going to have some more clarification on what happens tonight, or after what happens tonight. But for now, I'm still sticking with Cody Rhodes.
Yeah, I think it's a very solid, safe choice, but one that makes total sense. And I think that, we'll discuss the options of what could happen there if they were to dare have Cody lose again. My prediction was that it's going to be Cody, and that you are going to have Randy Orton screw Cody at WrestleMania, and then you're off to a Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes program. That would be a lot of fun, a lot of history there, obviously. And Randy heel is always honestly more fun than him as a babyface. So that's my prediction for a early call on a main event that doesn't even exist yet, on top of a heel turn that doesn't even exist yet. So we're like 3 layers deep, but that's my call right now, 3 months out. Now, when it comes to other returns, and I have made this very clear, and I've been hammered on Twitter for it, or X on it. And I know you don't follow the AEW product as much as a lot of other people do. And I don't know, I follow it about as much as you do. But the one name that keeps coming up, and the one name that has been coming up for a couple of years, is MJF, who is now removed from the AEW roster, at least on their website, which could be a work. It could be just to get people going. He could have signed silently behind the scenes with AEW. I have made the prediction that he will debut in WWE in 2024. It may not be at the Rumble, but I think that he is smart enough to realize that he has done everything there is to do in AEW, and that his career can accelerate at a much higher rate in WWE. He's worked with almost nobody here, and that he has a bigger pond and a bigger pool of talent to work in. And so, I don't know this for it to be a fact, but I would imagine that MJF debuts in WWE in 2024. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I keep going back and forth on this because right before we came on here, I saw the whole thing that he was removed off their roster. I said, oh, this is a work. Tony Khan, who I despise, by the way. I cannot.
He's a weird guy.
He is so bizarre. Did you see the way he was, like, what he was wearing?
Yes.
When he answered like the very serious allegations regarding Chris Jericho.
Yes.
Like, oh my, and like how, like I saw someone say like he's a rich mark who wants to be buddies with his talent. And I saw the way he like embraced Tony Storm. And I was just thinking about, and this isn't me being like, like tribalism for WWE or like me hating on AEW because it's cool, but like just think of the way Tony Khan acts at his press scrums versus Triple H.
I know.
And on a side note, man, like, we're on AEW, guys, but like, for me, the reason why I won't even give them a chance is because of how Tony Khan conducts himself.
He conducts himself. He's got a lot of money. That doesn't matter to me, because what he's showing the public is he's a very unserious person. And, he's got a lot of money and he's trying to be like one of the boys. It's like, that doesn't work. And it comes across very immature and very unserious. And I can't take him seriously. It seems like he doesn't have a set. I'm sorry. Look at the way CM Punk treated him a couple of years ago at that press conference. I forget, after All In or whatever it was. And CM Punk just basically hammered the company in front of him. And Tony Khan's just sitting there like a child. And I'm like, this is your company. And like, your own talent is disparaging your own company in front of you. What does that say about you? So again, I don't know him on a personal level, but if I did, and this is all I had to judge him on, I would say he's an unserious clown that wants to play in the sandbox and be one of the boys, but doesn't know how to really run a company from a professional standpoint that is required to be successful. And on top of it, he's weird. Like,
he is very weird.
The way he speaks, his eyes are like, 4 inches big, and he's always like staring into space. And I'm like, is he human being? Is he a human? I mean, I don't know. He's very strange, obviously very successful. I can't take that from him. I don't know him on a personal level, but from what I've seen, just the dude is he's off his rocker.
And I don't think he's a serious guy, because he's obviously just a super fan. Because imagine creating a wrestling company, appointing a bunch of talent as like prominent, like, like string pullers and decision makers behind the scenes. And you appoint yourself as like the head of creative and the on-screen authority figure. Like, it's just like, if you were serious about this, like, not to say that you would appoint someone else to run the entire thing, but like, would it not make more sense if you were like the chairman and then you appointed like an actual booker to be like head of creative, like, I don't know, like Tony Schiavone or Jim Ross or one of these guys, Or like, I actually heard, I know Jim Cornette hates him now, but apparently like he tried to get Jim Cornette in originally, and then appoint an on-screen authority figure, like just whoever. Like, you brought in William Regal to AEW, he would have been like the perfect guy to fit any of those positions, if not both. And it's just like, he rubs me like a guy, or like he strikes me as a guy rather, that just wants to have fun with like real life action figures. And you kind of see that it's all wrestlers who are over the hill who have like the most success there, save for CM Punk in a way, because CM Punk, maybe for him, he's not over the hill because he missed 10 years of wrestling. So he's trying to actually like, I don't know, like he's looking for something different. But you see like how much Edge loves it, and Christian loves it, and Samoa Joe's your world champion now. And you see like how much Jericho, loves it, and John Moxley. I'm just like, these are all guys who pretty much had their heyday, or Daniel Bryan. Like, these are all guys who their primes are behind them. They're in like maybe not the twilight of their career. Like John Moxley still have tread left on the tires, but like they are all guys who like, you probably only have a handful of years left. And it's because he caters to old school wrestling stars. And I don't know, like, I'm not saying like it's completely black and white, but like, it just strikes me as a place where like, for like superhero, like for like old time wrestlers to go and have fun and fantasy book themselves. And he's been fantasy booking himself as the head of creative and an on-screen authority figure. And like, maybe people will be like, oh, well, Vince was an on-screen authority figure and head of creative and all this stuff. But it's just like, well, he wasn't an on-screen authority figure until the Attitude Era, where he had already owned the company for 15 years. And, his dad and his grandfather had been in the business for decades upon decades. So he learned it, and he started as an announcer. So like, it's not apples to apples, and not for anything, but Vince was was an imposing guy, and Tony Khan looks like a twerp. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't want to turn this into AEW bashing, which I know I'm not an AEW guy, and sometimes it comes off as it. But if you just objectively look at how AEW is run by Tony Khan, like there are so many warts in it.
Yeah, it just screams unprofessional. But I'm sure the guys love it. And I'm sure if I was employed by that company, it would feel much more liberating as a talent because you're not, micromanaged and your promos can be whatever you need them and want them to be within reason. And it just feels like you don't have someone always breathing over your shoulder. And I appreciate that. That's I would imagine most of us, even in, our day-to-day work, like wherever you may work, you don't want to be micromanaged. And it feels like that is where people go and they speak about that. We've heard about that from talent and saying that they love that part of it. But then there's the drawback of it feels unorganized. And it feels like you said, he's just this grown man playing with action figures, but enough money to make them real. And it does. And I mean, I'll be honest, he looks like a tool. Like he does. He kind of looks like a tool, but a tool with a whole bunch of money and a much more successful businessman than I'll ever probably be.
But let's be fair here for 1 second. Like, it's his dad's money.
Yeah, true.
His dad owns the Jacksonville Jaguars. His dad owns a football team in England, or a soccer team where we come from in North America. Like, it's not like he's like this self-made like billionaire. Like, he's not like, he was born into money and his dad was nice enough to lend him a bunch and let him work for the Jaguars and all this stuff. Like it's like, I don't say I don't have respect for him, but it's like, and look, a year ago or whenever it was when CM Punk had that embarrassing press scrum and he was eating the muffins and he was old and tired and beat up. Like, I thought CM Punk looked so bad coming away from that. But now I'm thinking like, man, like he must just be disgusted that he came out of retirement for this. And you see the way that AEW has got, like, look, AEW had Dynamite in Montreal a few weeks ago. And I was with my cousin earlier today, and he said you could have gotten floor seats for $70. Like ringside seats for $70. Monday Night Raw, it's like $250. Yeah. So, and I'm not trying to like crap all over it, but like there's clear, and they came out hot out of the cannon. I really liked it right out of the cannon, but it just quickly struck me as like, okay, you're just catering to like old school guys because it's like you're playing with real life action figures.
But at the same time, I mean, there's an audience for it. Was it last week? Dynamite beat Raw. Not that they go head to head, and it was a holiday week, which holiday week ratings you can kind of throw in the trash. I mean, they're just they're kind of irrelevant. But if you want to say that they beat Raw, then they beat Raw in the ratings. And it does seem like AEW's up and down. And oh my God, there's nobody. Like, you see video of AEW and you see like the live events have almost like a couple hundred people there. And it's just awful. It's embarrassing. And then the next, a couple of weeks, you'll see the Dynamite's full. And it's like, what is going on? Like, I can't figure out what is going on from not just creative, but like from a business standpoint with AEW. I'm like, is this a company that's we're watching it tank live, or is this a company that's just going through growing pains and eventually it's going to be, that's maybe in the next 5-10 years, a real competitor to WWE? I mean, I don't know what we're watching right now. It feels like a transition year for AEW, but trying to focus back on it, maybe this is a topic for us to discuss at some point, is AEW just as a whole. It's a topic you and I haven't really explored together, but focusing back on MJF, now that we've said all that we've said, and that Tony Khan, obviously his pockets are super deep, I've made the prediction that he'll debut in WWE. But I've also said at the same time that AEW needs him way more than WWE does, and I think they're willing, especially with Tony's deep pockets, he is willing to spend more to keep him because the need to keep him is greater, and that he'll just pay whatever and outbid whatever WWE gives him. And so there's a strong chance that he still stays with AEW. But what's your take?
I'm so back and forth on it. And just one last thing on AEW, and then we'll move on quickly. Everyone's praising Edge versus Christian for the TNT Championship, which is basically the equivalent of like the IC or the US title. If this was happening in WWE, would people not be complaining about them leaning on stars of yesteryear?
They would, but you got to remember that people still look at this as kind of as a newer company that is still using older stars as a crutch. And they're accepting more of that than WWE. It's been around for generations. I think that's the lens they're looking at it through. But
yeah,
I agree. Yeah,
I don't know. I just find it whatever.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
To MJF, I keep going back and forth on it. I do think he'll come to WWE just because of he dropped the championship to Samoa Joe, and just the way both companies have been trending. And look, I'm not sure if MJF will ever be the face of WWE or as prominent of a figure as he is in AEW, just because of how many just loaded, just how loaded the roster is. Especially with Orton coming back and AJ Styles coming back and CM Punk is back and Roman Reigns when he's there, and if the Rock shows up and Brock, but MJF is, let's say, like a fringe main eventer in WWE or as the face of AEW, where is he going to leave more of a legacy? I would still say the former in WWE, because like you said, he's kind of done all he could do. Like, he's been the world champion AEW for a year at this point. He had prominent programs with, I think he had one with Punk. I think, obviously, Joe. He had something going on with Adam Cole or whatever. But, you just look at who's left over there and just where the companies are heading. And I think he's younger than me. I think he's 25 years old or whatever. The options are so, limitless in WWE as opposed to AEW. It's he's already conquered the mountain, and I'm sure he could. I guess you can make the case that he could stay in AEW and he can continue to build his legacy and maybe be the greatest AEW star ever, or the Hulk Hogan of that company, the first big major homegrown star. But I'm just looking at it, I'm just man, if I'm just putting myself in his shoes and take away my my preference of WWE over AEW. Take that all away and just be completely impartial. In a guy in your mid-20s, where would you rather go? And it's you're asking, it's almost like you want to be the best undisputed player in the CFL, the most outstanding, the face of the CFL, or do you want to be a middle of the pack quarterback in the NFL? Sorry, I still want to go be a middle of the pack quarterback in the NFL. It'd be great to be the face of the CFL, but unfortunately, not many people know what the CFL is. Do you know what the CFL is as an American?
Right.
And as much as wrestling people know what AEW is, if you ask any non-wrestling fan, hey, do you know what WWE is? They'll be like, yeah, for sure. If you ask any non-wrestling fan what AEW is, they'll be like, no, what's that? And that's how I look at it.
Yeah, that's why I've made the analogy. It's a big fish in a small pond, and they just are right now. And I really do wish them success. I hope they become competitive to WWE truly one day. I really do, because that means that everyone will be lifted to a higher level in theory. Right? When they have true competition and feel threatened, everything should get better because they feel the heat. And it also gives the guys another place to go. We've heard that thing too, which is fine. But the thing is, now that I'm hearing you talk about this from a business perspective, put our feelings about AEW aside, which again I don't hate. I think that you look at this, and if I'm MJF, that dollar amount on the contract can't be the only thing that I'm looking at. He's already got enough money, probably even if he retired today, to probably set himself up for the rest of his life. I mean, he's made probably multi-millions already. So that said, if I look at the dollar amount, and it's within a reasonable range of what WWE is offering me and then AEW is offering me, I have to look at this and say, okay, AEW is going to pay me more, but what about exposure? What about my legacy? What about merchandise sales? WWE has a much larger platform, a much larger reach. Their cable or their network contract is something that you don't have to really worry about with WWE. With AEW, it's in flux. They don't know if they're going to get a big contract with the network in the next year. Things could go awry. The ratings have been up and down. That's not good for negotiations on AEW's front. You look at this and say, I could be a big star in like you said, even a mid-range star in WWE, or maybe even higher, or I could be this big fish in a small pond and continue to do what I'm doing. And maybe that's what he wants to do. But I really believe he's looking at this saying, there's a whole massive pool of guys I haven't worked with yet. And I keep thinking about the matchups we haven't even seen. Okay, John Cena would be, to me, the promos alone, I would empty my bank account to see. The CM Punk, if we want to revisit that again. I keep saying The Miz, believe it or not, because he's been, I guess, compared to The Miz throughout his entire career. I think they would have a hell of a program together. Just, thinking about the things he could do would be really just mind-blowing to me. But obviously, I don't know if only the money matters to him. It can't. The money can't be the only thing. As much as he said it's the bidding war of 2024, I truly believe there's more to it than that. He's a smart businessman, but he sees the forest through the trees, I believe. And he's looking at this and going, okay, yeah, they may pay me a little bit more, but ultimately long term, way better to be over here in the big pond than over here as the big guy on campus at a small place. So any final thoughts on MJF before we move on?
No, I think that pretty much covers it. And we could talk, we could spin around in circles until we actually find out like what happens here, because is it a work the roster thing or is it real? But I guess we're going to find out one way or another in a month's time.
Yeah, we're going to find out real quick, unless he signs into a short-term deal and you see him at WrestleMania. I mean, we don't know. We could see him follow up with this whole devil reveal of Adam Cole and him, screwing over MJF and beating him down and all that. Like, we could see a follow-up to that, and he's back with AEW, but maybe it's not long-term. We don't know. All right, well, moving on here, I haven't really touched on the women's division here, and the women's division has been, I think, kind of a I don't know, it feels like a lost ship on both divisions. It feels like it hasn't really found its way back in a while. Obviously, the Charlotte Flair injury didn't help. Becky Lynch being subjugated to kind of, I don't want to say irrelevant programs, but programs that have not exactly lived up to her previous hype that she's had, and being with Trish Stratus for, it seemed like 14 months, it was just forever, didn't help things. But she's had some good matches in NXT, and there's the looming Jade Cargill out there who has yet to debut. You have the women's tag team champions who have been very underwhelming, or the championships themselves have been very underwhelming and continue to be very underwhelming and cursed. So I'm looking at this and saying, Rhea Ripley's out there. She's this female superstar of the year, deservingly so. What do you see? You can kind of pick and choose things here, but I'll leave it to you. What do you see for the women's division in 2024, either with the women's world title or the WWE women's title debuts? What do you see coming?
Well, I think you're going to see a major shakeup in the rosters at some point or another. And I think if we look at Monday Night Raw to start, I think that is Rhea Ripley's division. And I think you're right when you mentioned that she should go on like maybe a mini Roman Reigns-esque run, because I do think she's one of the more dominant women we've seen and is right now head and shoulders above everyone. And I think the closest one to her at this point is Bianca Belair, but Bianca Belair has lost a lot of steam since WrestleMania, I would say. So I think Rhea Ripley is going to continue to dominate Monday Night Raw, but they're going to have to find a way to get more credible wrestlers to combat her. And I think what they, obviously, without trying to give too much away, I think they did a great job of trying to push Nia Jax in that direction at the day one Monday Night Raw. And, Jade Cargill's coming. Is Sasha Banks going to return? But I think they have to find a way to establish main event stars beyond the ones that have just kind of been recycled at the top of the division for years at this point. Like, it's kind of been Bianca, Rhea, Charlotte, and then like a rotation of like a Bayley and an Asuka for the last 2 years or so. And you have to find a way to really build these stars. Like, I thought that they were doing a nice job with Raquel Rodriguez. Like, she wasn't there yet, but I thought that she, to this point, if not just for the visual alone, has been Rhea's best opponent. But then out of nowhere, like, we just haven't seen her probably since Crown Jewel. I don't think we've seen Raquel Rodriguez. And I think she was they were really on the right track with her. I think on SmackDown, you have more quantity, but lack in the way of quality. I obviously think they're fast tracking to Bayley versus Io. I think getting Bayley back into the main event scene in a consistent way as a babyface is imperative to it. And I think you have to revamp Bianca Belair's gimmick a bit, just because it's so stale and it hasn't changed since she moved up to the main roster, like 3-4 years ago at this point. And she has all the talent in the world. Between Rhea and Bianca, I think that talent-wise, it's a toss-up as to who's the better in-ring competitor. But the character development of Rhea Ripley has been so much better than Bianca, specifically over the last 12 to 18 months. And, Rhea at this point, to me, it's not even about the women's division anymore. She's one of the best stars they have, period. I would put her top 5, if not higher, in terms of, money drawers right now. And you hear with the crowd, they're inching. They have such a big itch to cheer for her right now. And when she's not associated with the Judgment Day, they do just kind of de facto cheer for her. They were cheering her and booing the hell out of who did she face at Survivor Series? The Shayna Baszler crony. Zoe Stark.
Zoe Stark, yeah.
They were booing Zoe Stark. They wanted Rhea Ripley to win. And I think that just kind of goes to show what kind of star Rhea Ripley is. So I think that they really just need to establish new stars in the main event scene, refresh Bianca Belair because she still is one of the best athletes and best women's stars they have to offer. And I think just continuing to build Rhea Ripley into one of the bigger stars, male or female, that the company has to offer.
Yeah, it's not like the women's divisions, plural, are in disrepair. There's a lot they could do. It is about reshuffling, and like you said, it is kind of the same women cycling in and out of the main events picture. But I look ahead and I'm thinking, sure, even if they sign Sasha Banks or not, I don't think that's going to be a make or break for the women's division. We've heard conflicting reports. It was, oh yeah, she's sure going to be returning, and then we saw even Sasha Banks or Mercedes Moné. She posted on Instagram pictures of her outside in a arena where she was, or WWE had a live event that night, and then having a picture of her in a ring with Triple H's picture behind her and all this stuff. And then the next day it's like, oh no, talks have fallen through. And it's like, what? It's so frustrating as a fan. It's like, well, then which one is it? Are we just being played? And I talked about this too. I said, I don't know if this is just a red herring where we're going to make the fans think I'm coming, and then we're going to put out a false report that'll spread like wildfire that, if talks have fallen through, so that when I debut, it is a surprise. I mean, or if it's like some kind of weird triple reverse psychology, I don't know. But honestly, whatever the case is, having her back would be a big deal. But I don't think they're going to die without Sasha Banks. I know a lot of people want her back, but if she lands in AEW, good for her. But when you look at kind of the up-and-coming women, too, I mean, Alba Fire and Isla Dawn, who have been out there, I know they recently just came back. They're a tag team, but it doesn't seem like they're still taking the women's tag team division seriously. They haven't done that since its inception. They created a belt before there was a division. I can't remember the last time, or if ever, that has happened where a belt was created before a division was. It's bizarre. And since that time, it's just been a completely cursed championship where either you get them and you get injured, or you get them and then you're off TV for 6 months. It's really weird. So I have no faith in the tag team championships until they prove me otherwise. But when it comes to the women's singles championships, Io Sky's got to drop that belt. It's got to be to Bayley. We've been waiting for that for like 6 months now, I feel like. And Bayley going on a babyface run will be a lot of fun. I think that's something that'll happen in 24. And then, of course, you look at the women's side of things on the Raw side, and I don't think Rhea's going to drop it at WrestleMania 40. I don't think she's going to drop it at SummerSlam. I think, again, I said this in my predictions, it probably could be a year from now we're saying, well, who's Rhea's opponent going to be for WrestleMania 41? Because at that point, you're thinking, okay, that person will have a real chance. I really think we could have that long of a run for Rhea, and I'm not sad about it either. Really any run after Roman Reigns' run, whenever this ends, is going to feel like, really short in comparison. So I'm excited for the women's divisions on both brands. It's just a matter of kind of reshuffling the deck a bit, as you said.
Yeah, and it feels a little stale on SmackDown, and on Raw, it's just a lack of star power. That's the way it kind of... And I said before that SmackDown lacks the star power, but I think it's because I just see Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch and how big of stars they are But then after that, there's a steep drop off. But if you continue to build Nia Jax into like a monster type of heel, if you do some good work with Raquel Rodriguez, Zoe Stark, like I think there's more promise on Raw. SmackDown, it's very like, I know that they've tried like hell to push what's her face, Shotzi. I get it. She just doesn't do it for me. The character's just a bit off. I see that. I think they're giving Michin a shot at the women's championship on this SmackDown coming up, and I think that there is potential with Michin. You obviously have Zelina Vega, who you've been very vocal about with untapped potential. I just feel like the top talent, especially with Charlotte Flair not there, lacks on SmackDown. And that's not to say that they don't have the talent there. It's, you know, Bianca is a top tier wrestler. Bayley's probably my favorite woman wrestler on the roster. You have Asuka, but it's stale. And they need to do some big facelifting with the women they have on SmackDown because it just feels like very stale in that division.
And it may be as simple as just turning a couple heel, a couple babyface. I mean, like Bayley babyface, Bianca heel, that's a big change right there. And then when you get Charlotte back in the June, July, apparently that's when she's coming back, June, July timeframe, that'll be in time for SummerSlam. You could give a big match to whoever the champion is with Charlotte. And so I think that it's not damaged beyond repair, as we just said. I think it's just a little bit of tweaking here and there. And then sure, you could bring up some new talent, introduce Jade Cargill, and then you're off to the races. And I think they'll be just fine. But all right, well, in the final segment of the show here, as we wrap it up, I'll give you the stage to, if you have anything. Obviously, there's so much more we could talk about in predictions and possible returns and possible matchups, Rock Roman, all this stuff. But like, what do you think, or that is possible in 2024 that you're looking for that we haven't discussed yet? Men, women, whatever championship, Gunther. I mean, whatever.
I think that we're probably going to see maybe not the end of the Judgment Day, but a major defection from the Judgment Day. And I think that 2024 is probably going to be the year of Damian Priest. I really think that Damian Priest has been under the radar, probably the best and most nicely built star of the year. And, you know, I was watching the Elimination Chamber match from the pay-per-view last year in Montreal, and I remember that he was one of the guys in that chamber match for the U.S. Championship, and how he was kind of an afterthought because it was all about Austin Theory versus Seth Rollins and the breakout performances of Montez Ford and Bronson Reed. And, like, just how much of an afterthought he was. And then at WrestleMania, like, did he have a match? I think he did, but I really don't remember. Like, I know Finn Balor had the prominent match of any Judgment Day member aside from Rhea Ripley when he had the Hell in a Cell versus Edge, and Dominic went against Ray, but I'm trying to think if Damian Priest had a match, and I can't think of it. And then you look at where he's gone since he won the Money in the Bank, and I'm saying, like, this guy is just on a collision course with the main event. And I think that he will cash in the Money in the Bank briefcase to win the World Heavyweight title. So, and you know what? I mean, I'm saying this now, but he could be the one to cash in on Roman Reigns. And then that could kind of lead to a Judgment Day versus babyface bloodline thing, maybe late in 2024. But I think Damian Priest will be the biggest star of 2024. Maybe not the biggest star, but the biggest breakout star. And I think he's going to cement himself beside the likes of, you know, Randy Orton, LA Knight, like atop the food chain and creative.
That's a pretty interesting prediction because as you're talking about it and you're telling me, yeah, he's kind of been a nice, almost under the radar build. Yeah. I mean, I've almost forgotten at times that he's Mr. Money in the Bank. I mean, I've, and that's what they want you to do. And
which is a good thing.
Yeah. And it's great because I keep, you know, looking at this going, oh, Drew's got to win. But I'm like, well, wait a minute. I keep forgetting about it. Damian Priest is like 7-8 months in now to his Money in the Bank win. Like, we're getting towards the end. He's going to cash in the next 3-4 months. So he keeps looming out there and I keep forgetting him completely as an option. But when you look from where he was to where he is now as kind of, well, really second in command to Rhea, even though they don't quote unquote have a leader, he has done he's always solid on the microphone. He's always solid in the ring. He's got a great voice. I mean, just like from just a pure sound perspective, he sounds just so just dominant when he speaks. I think that you're right. It could be the year of Damian Priest as world heavyweight champion. Or, as you said, he could cash in on Roman Reigns. I don't believe that restricts him just to Monday Night Raw. I don't think so. Absolutely. He could be the one to do that. But I think at some point it will be on the Monday Night Raw side of things for the world title. I still think it'll be that, but sure. I don't really care who beats Roman at this point. As you said, I don't give a damn. I don't care. And that's sad. But yeah, absolutely. This could be a very fun year. And we didn't even touch on some of the other things, like we said with Gunther. I mean, who could defeat him if he drops the belt? I still think he will this year. Quick, I got to ask you then, just very quickly. Do you think Gunther will drop the belt in 24?
I think he'll drop it before WrestleMania, and I think it's one or two guys for me. It's either Sami Zayn to finally give him a prominent singles championship victory, but the low-hanging fruit to me, and I think one that would make a ton of sense, is Jey Uso.
Yes, I was just going to say that. And I think that Jey Uso, this also could be a big year for Jey Uso, who has gotten over more than I think anyone expected to at this point. Obviously, Yeet. But in the ring, he has proven he doesn't need a tag partner, even though I still think he could be the one to face Jimmy at WrestleMania. They could go Jimmy J at WrestleMania if they have an interaction in the Rumble. But if not, I would actually prefer him to be the one to dethrone Gunther at WrestleMania. And then you have Gunther at that point, and maybe he'll have a rematch, but thrust right into the world title picture in the spring of next year. So I think that just having a demotion for Gunther is really a promotion, because that tells you he's going into the next level. So I have no problem with that. And it's also a great win for Jey Uso. And that title, whoever wins that, I think the Intercontinental title would mean more than Roman dropping the belt to whoever, just based on how much Gunther has done with that championship, as you and I have said. So
what I'm thinking is, like, if Jey Uso wins the IC title, imagine a triple threat match with Solo and Jimmy with that title on the line at WrestleMania. I would have a lot more interest in that than just Jimmy versus Jey with nothing on the line.
Right, just pride. Yeah, I mean, that's really what would be on the line, is pride. That's it. Yeah. So after all the things Jey especially has done, and Jimmy, who has been kind of just lost in the fog since he rejoined the Judgment or the Bloodline. I mean, I really have no interest in that anymore. The Civil War stuff, as you and I have said, is just kind of like it was great, but it's over. So, all right. Well, any final thoughts before we wrap up here?
No, I think we covered a lot here, especially, I guess the final thought would be, like, because I kind of spilled my guts on how I feel about AEW, how do you overall feel about it?
You mean as a company?
Yeah, just like when you think about it as a product, if you'd spend money on it, if you go out of your way to watch it. Like, I know we could probably do a 2-hour show on this, but just like quickly.
Very quick, I think that, first of all, I have nothing against AEW. Do I think they are unprofessional at times? Absolutely. Do I think Tony Khan is unprofessional at times and trying to be he's a big goof? Yes. Do I think he's a bad human being? No. But I think that it's a promotion that's still trying to find its legs and its identity, because it's got all of these ex-WWE stars that it's so funny when you hear them debut into AEW, they get these massive pops. And at the same time, those very same fans will tell you they're not WWE fans, yet those people would not know who these guys are if they didn't watch WWE's product. It's always funny to me that AEW fans tell me they're not WWE fans. But in terms of like where those stars came from, recognizing that clearly you watch the product to know who these guys are. But nonetheless, I think it's a company that needs to, as we have talked about, needs to stop relying on, and so does WWE, stars of yesteryear. There's no issue with having stars come in and fight with each other for a while. I mean, like, really, there's no. If you guys want to, have a little play fight and have your fantasy matchups like Christian and Adam Copeland do, great. I mean, cool. And I saw some of that match. They busted for the age and mileage on their bodies. They did do a nice job. MJF, I still want in WWE. Samoa Joe as champion and world champion AEW. I have no issue with that. I think Samoa Joe was underutilized to a criminal degree in WWE. The match with Brock Lesnar he had in WWE was, I think, something that could have really ran with and made even a WrestleMania match out of it. But as far as AEW goes, I don't have nothing against it. I really don't. I think that for me, I don't think it's fair to give a full analysis without actually diving into the product and watching it on a weekly basis. I mean, I see clips on YouTube and on TikTok and on Instagram, and I get my analysis from there, and I see clips of Tony Khan acting like a clown in press conferences and things. So we get all those bits and clips. But honestly, I don't think it's fair for me to give a full conclusive analysis of like, this is how I feel about AEW and this is where they're going to go without actually watching the product. But honestly, I wish the best for them. I really do. It's good for everyone, fans and talent, to have another company. So.
Yeah, well, I think that's all fair to say. And this isn't dunking on it. It's just that it's really not my cup of tea, and he annoys me in his press conferences. But aside from that, I think it's a great place.
Yeah. Other than that, right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, very good. And we will be kicking off the 2024 year at the end of this week with another show from Anthony, which is the After Dark show. You guys can catch that on Apple. You guys can catch that on the Patreon side of things. And I know you usually don't have a topic prepared yet until maybe a day or two before, so I won't ask you unless you have something in mind that you're going to talk about. But I would imagine it's going to be coming off of a big day one Raw. You're probably going to have a thing or two to talk about, I would imagine, because this is going to be a big Raw. So
yeah, no, I imagine I'll do a review for this and probably a preview for New Year's Revolution, which will be the SmackDown branded show. And it's pretty cool that they're doing this, but I do think one way or another you should bring back a pay-per-view between Survivor Series and Rumble, whether that be Armageddon or New Year's Revolution, because it feels like they did it last year and then they tried to do it again this year with no pay-per-view, and they realized that there's just so much story to tell, and you can have significant moments happen right before the Rumble, like Evolution's Night of Shine at Armageddon 03, or the first ever Money in the Bank cash-in, a show you were at New Year's Revolution in 2006. Like, this is a very pivotal time right before you head into the Royal Rumble, and I think not having a pay-per-view is really a detriment.
It's like they're half pregnant here. It's weird. I've never seen them do this where it's like they made the schedule and then 3 weeks out they're like, oh crap, we probably should have done a PLE. What do we do? Let's split the difference. It's day one edition of Raw. It's the New Year's Revolution edition of SmackDown. It's kind of like they just felt like they made a mistake and they tried to half-ass it. And I'm not saying that's actually what happened. They probably are experimenting here with rebranding a special edition of Raw and a special edition of SmackDown with making it feel special because of the name. But I think that they're looking at this going, I think we could have squeezed a pay-per-view out of this. And I think they could too. I like the pay-per-view on day one. Or if they want to call it New Year's Revolution, either's cool with me. But I like that because it's like a fresh start to the new year. You don't have to wait another 4 weeks for the Rumble. It's a nice stopgap. I don't know. So anyway, all right, well, we'll wrap it up here. But we're looking forward to the show on Friday, as we'll drop that probably later in the day. And hope you guys take a listen. But thanks so much for joining me, and we'll be chatting in a week.
Yeah, man. Looking forward to it. Take care.
You too.
Thanks for listening to the WWE Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss a show, or head to WWEpodcast.com. And for all of these shows ad-free, head over to patreon.com/WWE Podcast. Until then, we'll see you next time.